We really appreciate the opportunity to go ahead and reach out directly with all the small businesses across the state. No better way than through this medium. And what I'd like to do is kind of walk everyone through the entire process. As Amy said, I think it's going to enable a lot of you to get your questions answered. And if you can just kind of bear with us as we kind of talk about some of these slides, I think you'll find that this is gonna go ahead and cover a lot of the particularly the most common questions. With the disaster loan portal, one of the things that we continually tell folks to do is to take the forms. There are about 6 or 7 forms for every type of business. With one exception, they start with form 5, which is listed there in that top bullet. If you are a sole proprietor, however, which is about 70% of all businesses in the state, then it's form 5C. Slight different types of questions, most of the same information. Best practice that we recommend at the bottom of the screen, print out all of these forms first, fill them out first. Go ahead and do that, because the time you spend doing that will enable you, when you go onto the web portal to apply for the loan, you're able to enter the information much more quickly and move through the whole process a lot better. I've talked to a number of folks about that, and the ones who did it the way we suggest, which is print it out, fill it out, and then go onto the site and enter all of that data into the screen is much, much better. So these are the forms that you're going to be dealing with, either form 5 or 5C, which is, again, that's for sole proprietor only. It's one or the other. Then you've got a tax authorization form asked for so that we can access your IRS tax returns. So you'll have to print that form out. It's just simply signing it, giving us approval to access your tax return, and then you scan it, upload it, and that's simply a quick signature there. Some of the other forms, we recommend the most recent tax returns. Kathy, you can weigh in on this if you'd like. I've heard both ways. Some people, or many people, say go ahead and provide a copy then. I'm not sure if there's some other thought on that in terms of personal identification information, but this is a secure website, so that information is secure and able to be uploaded into the portal safely. Personal financial statement, we have a form 413. However, some people have, either with their bookkeeper, accountant, or maybe just using some software, they're able to create their own personal financial statement. For anyone who owns 20% or more of the business, if you've got a situation like that, everyone who owns 20% or more of that company, that small business, needs to complete and provide a personal financial statement for those individuals. So say you had 3 people that each own a third, all 3 of them would fill out that financial statement and provide that, and they can upload it into the portal. Schedule of liabilities, that is simply, if you look at those documents, the forms themselves, it's just a grid basically that says the fiscal year you're in by month. For if you have 3 years or more of history, you can provide that. It's a single page, 8.5 by 11, where you just put in January, February, March, all down through, say, 2017. Then there's another column. You do that same month by month for 2018, same month by month for 2019. However, there are some folks who don't have 3 years, or maybe they only have 6 months. Whatever you have as your liabilities, you can go ahead and list all of that, and the same goes for your revenue, because we'll be talking about that. It's in essence, for a lot of folks, the revenue is what you're trying to assess, where you are up and through. Kathy, I believe the date is January 31st is when they talked about the coronavirus actually as the official date in this country when we started to feel the impact. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So these are the forms. There are one or two others, but they're very, for the most part, very basic forms. Now, if you go to Form 5 or 5C, they might be 5 or 6 pages long, but if you look, half of that or more are instructions. So a lot of that, they provide definitions and things of that nature. So it's really not that onerous. So what you will do is, as you're starting that application process, you'll go to the first tab, Eligible Disaster Areas. Make sure, and we've got another slide later on that we'll talk about, make sure for Kentucky, when you go on to sba.gov/disaster, it'll take you to this link right here, disasterloan.sba.gov. This is the actual portal. Make certain that you select the Kentucky disaster that's labeled coronavirus, in parentheses, COVID-19, because you have to be careful. I think there are 2 or 3 active small scale disasters for flooding, etc. And by the way, on this site, because we have never had all 50 states listed, I think it's at the very bottom of page 5. When you go to the screen and you have to click through to page 5, there's small numbers at the bottom. Make sure you get to the very bottom of page 5 and you'll see Kentucky, coronavirus, parentheses, COVID-19. So when you actually apply, make certain that you're clicking on the right disaster declaration. Okay. Something else, you can log in, but the first process is the registration. You'll need to create a username and password, and when you go back, you'll just simply log in. But that first process, making certain that you pick a username and a password that you're going to remember. You may submit some of the information. You may submit all of it in one session when you sit down to do this. You can also, though, check periodically to see the progress of your application, to see where it is in place. So just a couple of best practices there. Page 1 of the registration form. In addition to the other forms that I talked about earlier, these are actual screenshots of the site. It's just very basic info, contact information, etc. Anytime you see something with an asterisk on it, those are must fill in the blank areas. So we had some people who just skipped through some of those particular text boxes, didn't enter the information, and then they thought that it wasn't proceeding because there was another kind of issue. But you just need to ensure before you move on to the next screen that anything with an asterisk, that you're able to go ahead and provide that information in these boxes. Okay, so applying on it. In this case, because normally with a disaster, we're talking about a natural disaster that has to do with tornado, wildfire, flooding, those sorts of situations. But on this screen, when you're applying, in addition to making sure you select coronavirus, Kentucky declaration for that, select business and nonprofits. You will not ever need in this situation to select homeowners and renters. That again is for a typical type of natural disaster. In this case, it is only for the businesses and the nonprofits who are applying for economic impact disaster loans. EIDLs is what we refer to those as. So when you're doing that, in this particular screenshot, you have a choice up here of a corporation, partnership, nonprofit, a private nonprofit, other types of partnerships, limited liability company. So if you are anything other than a sole proprietor, you're going to be going over here. In this case, the example shows a limited liability entity. So make sure whatever the legal entity is you're set up as, you click that one. And in every case in this situation, always check the box for the coronavirus economic impact disaster loan. Economic injury, check right there. It has nothing to do with property, business contents. Again, those are for a typical disaster, unlike what we're going through now. So you'll check that and then move on to the next screen. And again, always check EIDL for economic injury. So these are screenshots just again showing an example. In this case, it's Virginia. Drop down to get to Virginia, if that's the state, in our case, Kentucky. Select the county. And then over here, you'll select the little circle there for coronavirus for Kentucky. There is only one of those. Again, it's probably on the bottom of page 5 when you first get into the website, but it'll drop down to those and you might have 2 or 3 choices. Remember, it's the coronavirus one that we're talking about. Okay, just reading and agreeing. You check here, I certify that the information I'm providing is as complete and truthful as to the best of my knowledge. This is Form 5 again, just showing some of the options. Disaster business loan application, click start, and then you're off to the races with it. And this is why it's so important to take those other forms like this when you're starting to apply and have all that information ready. You don't want to be on the website shuffling through a big stack of papers looking for one that you thought you had, but you can't find it in order to transfer that information from the printed form into the screen here. Again, just a reminder, red asterisks highlighting those things that are necessary information in order for you to complete the application. Also, in this particular situation on the Form 5 or 5C, they recommend including, if you can, multiple phone numbers, maybe a cell phone, business number, maybe multiple email addresses, because once your loan officer has been assigned to your application, they oftentimes have a question where they just need a response. It might take 30 seconds on the phone or a very short email. If they're not able to reach you and you only have one phone number or one email address and you're tied up or don't see the message, it's just going to delay things for you. They're not going to pester you, but they want to be able to access you for questions as quickly as they can. And again, if you could provide a second email address and or phone number, that's better for them to proceed quickly with your application. This is page 2 of the form. The main thing I wanted to mention here, right over here, page 3, this is where you can add additional information. For instance, if you've got some extenuating circumstances or you want to put additional explanation, put that in there. You have a lot of room to type, but even if you need to add additional information, you can always put it on literally on a piece of paper or type it out, print it, and you can upload that as well. But this you'll find is a lot of room to put the circumstances you may want them to be really clear about, if you have some. So then you can go through here on this. If you do need to update anything, then you can go here, check that. In this particular example, they're showing several folks who own a business, and it's got all of them in there. For instance, personal financial statements for 2 owners, schedule of liabilities for, looks like probably the primary owner of the business, request for a transcript of tax returns. So you can click over there. In a lot of situations, you just hit start and you either upload the form or you might have had a form that you signed that you can scan and submit as well. So again, it's a pretty user-friendly type of system that most of you are probably used to and have done before. Okay, just reminding you about the personal financial statements. Also information if you have real estate. In this case, you know, with the disaster we're talking about, it's really loss of revenue, and really what we're trying to do is help the business stay in business. It's not, again, a business that had a roof torn off by a tornado or something of that nature. But they're going to ask, you know, what other assets do you have in order to assess how much you're going to need to recover you're not asking for a particular dollar amount. The information you provide in terms of what your liabilities are, what you owe, what you have as regular monthly fixed expenses, and what you have lost from this point forward in revenue based on your prior years or multiple years history of revenue. They have been doing this for about 40 some odd years, and they have really good data in order to assess what they think in your personal situation is going to be happening in the future. One of the questions we have is, how do I predict what my revenue is going to be? Well, we're looking at history. And again, a couple of screens back, if you had extenuating circumstances like we're off to a really great year, we picked up a contract or we had some business from somebody that we just started at the beginning of January, and boom, right at the end of the month or early February, it just came to a screeching halt. Make sure you provide additional information if you've got something going on this year to date that is dramatically different from the past. Okay. Personal assets and debts, that's again just a quick screenshot so you see the type of things that's in there. Again, it's not asking a whole lot. It's just trying to get a full picture of what's going on in your business. Liabilities, and I mentioned that earlier, this is the form number. There are about, for most applicants, 6 or 7 forms that they need to deal with, but most of the forms are very short, very easy. And again, these are the ones we recommend you print out ahead of time. So when you get to this version on the screen, not only will it look familiar, but you'll simply be able to type in those numbers or whatever data and information is on the printed form. So you'll go much more quickly through this process. And this is the 4506T. That's where you're giving the permission for SBA to access your IRS returns from the past. Just sign the form, upload it. You can mail these in, you can send these another way, but with all the forms and all the data, they recommend in most cases much better if you can do this on the secure online portal as opposed to mailing any of this in. While that is an option, it's going to be much slower going through the mail. So you're getting a big jump of days or maybe even longer ahead of where you would be just mailing everything in. Okay, just again, more information on that form to the IRS. And in this case, you would, Chadwick's name here, click Start, upload his signed form, permission for SBA to access it. Same with Craig, right below there. So again, if you got multiple employees or owners rather, you're able or need to get permission from all of those folks. If it's just a sole proprietor, a single owner, just one form is all you need. This shows again what the screens look like. Okay, we'll breeze through this right here. You're just saying yes to the best of your knowledge. This is truthful. And by the way, this will show your application number in this particular situation. This will be that same number all throughout. The taskbar will show how far you're progressing. In this case, pretty far along with the entire process. And we recommend not only to save a particular document, but periodically, if you get the sense you're slowing down a bit, you can save all the information up to that point you've entered. Just make sure you do that. In some situations, the screen will time out if you're not active for a while. Again, if you print out the form, fill it out, and have it ready so that when you sit down to your computer screen to enter all this, you can go through this again very quickly. Okay. Just messages about, successfully submitted application. See that. Again, the application number. We recommend that that you print that when you're complete. So you can go back, say you don't do it all at once, you can return at any time. That just shows you how to access it, to return back to continue option. If you don't complete everything in one session, just to continue, go ahead and do that. Click that there. In this particular case, instead of earlier, it was a limited liability company, it's a sole proprietor in this case. That's that form 5C. In a lot of small businesses, the vast majority in Kentucky are sole proprietor businesses. Regardless of which type of legal entity you're in this situation, always going to check economic injury, EIDL, economic injury disaster loans, or economic impact disaster loans. This is a screen they have as a normal demo for any kind of disaster. In this particular situation, you're not going to be dealing with home or personal property. So we're just going to blow right through this one. This again shows what it looks like if you've got, in this example, Virginia, multiple disasters. Sometimes these are open for 9 months or longer. So over the course of an entire year, you might have 3, 4, 5 or more active disasters. We always want to check, in this case, the coronavirus, COVID-19, check that particular disaster declaration. And then it shows the state and the county, drop-down boxes for that. I said earlier about saving the, hit the save button in the upper right-hand corner, just to make sure that all your information, you don't lose it if you get bogged down a little bit. Okay, this is just another example of signing that everything that you're submitting, to the best of your knowledge, is accurate and truthful. So Form 5C, just how to submit it, click start, and you're ready, you're off to the races. So I'm not going to walk through all of these because it's just sort of a repeat, but you'll see, again, it's very basic information, date of birth, name, social, income before the disaster. In this case, looks like had a pretty good year, up to date. And then anything that has a red asterisk, make sure that you include that as basic information, or you won't have a completed form when you get to the end of it. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of breeze through all of this. This is just like the other application form, except it's for sole proprietors 5C. Again, all the same stuff about submitting your tax return, or getting approval for your tax returns to be shared with SBA, so they can assess the situation you're in, what it had been in the past, and then you provide year-to-date information where you are up through whatever point it is that you apply. Okay. So again, this is not a big challenge. It's just the same sort of thing over and over. It's in terms of making sure that you complete the form with all the red asterisks text boxes. Right here, got it in screen, says document has been successfully updated. Okay, and that's really it. I did want to get to this screen right here. This is a message center. When you're done, you'll get an email back noting that you have confirmation on it. This again is what you want to print. It's got the application number and that you're submitting this, and then make sure that you keep that in, print it out is what we recommend, and keep that in your file folder with all the other information you have. Okay. That's really about it. Again, reminding you about the alert boxes to save your information often. Okay, and that's the end of that slide. Okay, this is what I'm having trouble with. And you're not able to see this one?
No. Looks like it's zoomed in on your taskbar.
Oh. Let's try this.
Yep.
Seeing
I see
it now?
that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. This is where Kathy's going to probably want to add some comments here.
Let's advance to the next slide, and let me, if you don't mind, Michael, let me zoom through this part.
Yep.
These slides are a little outdated because we currently have the entire United States declared a disaster for the coronavirus. Initially, how we get a disaster declaration is a governor certifies that at least 5 businesses suffered economic losses, and then that makes a county eligible. They were able to change the rules, and now all the states are eligible. So everybody in any state can apply. What are these loans about? They're economic injury disaster loans, otherwise known as working capital loans, to keep the business in business. That's the way I would best describe it. And they're available to small businesses, small agricultural cooperatives, small aquaculture businesses, and most private nonprofits. Okay, so our first test is, are you a small business? What we do is look at the North American Industry Classification System. Each business or operation has a code, and then you go to the SBA table, which is in the Code of Federal Regulations, and you look at your business code, which is usually on your tax return, and you compare the revenue with your business's classification, and if your revenue is less than that amount, then generally you're eligible as a small business. If you're a manufacturing concern, then it's based on the number of employees. So if you look at that classification for your particular manufacturing concern and you have less than that number of employees, then you're generally eligible. What you have to do is you have to be a business that was affected by the disaster. Do you have to prove it? No, because the entire country is affected. But what we want you to do is not only think about the business where it's obvious, such as a retail store that's closed, but look at the businesses that depend on that retail store, the manufacturer of the clothes, the cleaning service for the retail business, any company that does advertising for that business. So it's not only the businesses that are directly impacted, but the businesses that do business with that are also eligible, and even indirectly. So as a matter of fact, we would just say that unless we tell you otherwise, consider everybody is impacted by the coronavirus and should apply. But we want you to also be concerned about your vendors and other people, other businesses that you deal with. So the example here is manufacturer of widgets may be eligible, as well as the wholesaler and the retailer. So I don't want to buy, let's say, the pet rock anymore during this time. So the retailer starts suffering, and because of that, then the wholesaler starts suffering, and because of that, the manufacturer starts suffering. So we're trying to help all small businesses, regardless of what phase or what category they're in. Next slide, please. What does it take to get an approval? You have to have satisfactory credit. I can't tell you a credit score we use, but we do rely on credit reports to make our decision. Repayment. The business has to have the ability to repay the loan. We are cash flow lenders, not collateral lenders. And when you think, well, how can I show repayment? My business is closed. The whole town is closed down. The vendors, everybody. The good news is that they have just amended our program, so the first payment on a disaster loan is not for 12 months. So if I were able to, or Michael was able to, or Amy was able to approve a loan today, then your first payment would be 3/24/2021. That means 11 months from the date of the promissory note. Not from today, but from when they have their promissory note sent to them is when the first payment is due. So that gives the business some time to recover. Eligibility, you got to be in a declared county, which is a no-brainer since the whole state is declared. But what we have to do is tie the economic injury or the loss of working capital to the coronavirus. It cannot be because of a downturn in the economy. It cannot be because a factory closed in your area. It can't be for other reasons. Next slide, please. How much can I borrow? You can borrow up to $2 million. And you said, well, my business never earned more than $50,000. Then you're not going to get a loan for $2 million. That's the maximum amount. We're going to look at each business and determine the loan amount. The interest rate for small businesses is 3.75%. The businesses are eligible for this rate, and the interest accrues when the funds are dispersed. This is simple interest, so it's even better than you can get at a bank. If you're a nonprofit organization, the interest rate is 2.75. And if we need to stretch the loan out as far as 30 years to make it affordable, we can do that. Now again, eligibility for these working capital loans called economic injury disaster loans is based on size. You've got to be a small business. And so that's a requirement. We're going to analyze that. What are the funds for? The funds are for payments on fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, quarterly taxes, anything that the business could have paid had the disaster not occurred. So many people say, well, can I refinance my mortgage? No. If the disaster had not happened, would you be refinancing your mortgage? No. But you would pay your monthly payments on that mortgage with your business income. So that would be eligible. If you borrow from a state bridge loan program or an emergency loan, if you're approved for the SBA disaster loan, then we can incorporate the repayment of that emergency loan out of the SBA's economic injury disaster loans. Once again, you cannot use this loan to refinance debt. You can't use this loan to expand. You can't use this loan to make things better. It's to stabilize the business, to keep it in the manner it would have been had this not occurred. Next slide, please.
Just before we move to that, Kathy, just another point about the size standards. 99% of business in Kentucky and across the country is classified as small. The odds are virtually everyone, just about everyone, is eligible for the small business disaster loan.
Thank you for that. Okay, here's another component of SBA's economic injury disaster loans. You can borrow up to $25,000 without collateral. That's a signature loan. That's just like getting a credit card. However, if the loan is over $25,000, then we require collateral. SBA takes real estate when it is available. We will take second or third or whatever position is necessary. So if you have, if you're a sole proprietor and you own your business location and you already have an existing loan on it, SBA will take a second lien on that particular property. What we won't do is we won't decline somebody if they don't have real estate. We will take whatever type of collateral is available. We can take security interest on machinery and equipment, on inventory, on leasehold improvements. So we're not going to decline you if you don't own real estate. But if you have real estate and you say, well, Kathy, I don't want to pledge that. I already have 2 liens on my property and I don't want to have a third. Then we have 2 options. Either you ask for a loan for $25,000 or you decide to withdraw your application. Because legally we cannot lend you over $25,000 without having some collateral. So these are the options. Next slide, please. Okay, just like Michael said, who's eligible? Well, small businesses. What's a small business? It's everything you see here and more. Restaurants, retailers, gift shops, motels, hotels. In any owners of rental property, you wouldn't even think about it, but they are possibly losing rents at this time. So anybody who is a for-profit business and qualifies as a small business should be eligible. You've got to be in a declared area. Again, that's not an issue here. When you fill out the application and you put your physical presence, use an address, not a P.O. box. We can't say the business is located in a P.O. box. That would not qualify. Next slide, please. You may have applied for an SBA guaranteed loan before, and SBA's disaster loans are entirely different. They are offered from the U.S. Treasury, not a bank or a lender. The process is you submit the application, the loan officer reviews it, and determines whether or not it's an approval. If it is an approval, then they send the loan application to our legal department. Our legal department processes the loan closing documents and will mail them to you. Once you complete the loan closing documents and send them back is the first time that you're eligible for a disbursement of funds. So the process is the loan officer reviews the paperwork. If it's an approval, they send it to the legal department. You execute the documents and do what the little buck slip will tell you to do, sign here, send this here, and then once you send it back and they review it, it generally takes 5 to 7 business days to get an electronic deposit in your bank account. And this is true for loans of $50,000 or less. There's no cost to apply. The only cost there is the time it takes to complete the paperwork and submit it. And I say paperwork, we're recommending that you fill out the paper loan application and then upload the information to the electronic loan application. There's no obligation to take the loan if offered. So if I were able to call you and say, I'm going to approve you for a loan of $125,000, and you said, I don't think I need that much, I just want $75,000, then we can make you a lesser loan amount. However, what I would recommend is whatever loan amount we offer, take the full amount, and generally speaking, the loans are dispersed in installments. The reason for that is we can release $25,000 without having to have a mortgage recorded. And right now, a lot of courthouses are closed and you can't record that. So then get as much money as you can. And when you don't need the rest, you just say to SBA, cancel the rest of the loan, and we'll do that. So it's easier to take more and not need it than to take less and then ask for an increase, because it requires all new financial information. If you have an existing disaster loan, which many people do because there have been a lot of floods in Kentucky, you can still qualify for this disaster loan. It comes under a separate disaster declaration. But what SBA cannot do is consolidate the loans. You have to still have the loan for the flooding and the coronavirus loan. I will tell you that right now, all the disaster loans are payments are deferred until December. If you don't see that on your monthly bill, then call our servicing office, which is on your monthly bill, and tell them that you need the deferment of your disaster loan. We're trying to do everything we can to free up obligations that you have with SBA before you start to have to pay the government back. Next slide, please. Okay, I think Michael did a great job in explaining the forms we have. The application, there's one for sole proprietors, and the other one is for any other type of business entity. The form, IRS Form 4506, allows us to get tax transcripts for your businesses. And on these paper documents, there's instructions that tell you who needs to provide the form and who needs to sign it. If you are a sole proprietor and you file taxes jointly, then the husband and wife. If you're a corporation, then you think, how many tax returns do we file? We have 3 people with 33.33% ownership in the corporation and the corporation. So each of the 3 principals and then the corporation itself. We're asking for the most recent federal income tax returns. We're asking for your liability so we know what your obligations are. The personal financial statement it is also included in this. Again, if you are a nonprofit, certain documents that are here are not going to be required. Certain nonprofits do not have to file federal tax returns. Certain nonprofits do. So there's a separate filing requirement list for nonprofits, which we will try to make available to you. Now again, I know it seems extreme and time-consuming to say, fill out these paper loan applications, forms, and there's something electronically you can do. But it is a time saver. And filing electronically is better than filing a paper application and having to mail it, because it goes directly from your computer to ours, so that makes it faster. It's easier to transcribe the information, and it's more accurate because you're spelling your name, you're writing the information. Next slide, please. The additional filing requirements that we have is for us to establish the change in the business. So we're looking for historical sales. We're looking for the last 3 years up to the current month. If we don't have that available, then if we need it, we will contact you. It's not a filing requirement that's necessary to obtain before we start processing the loan. I will tell you that this particular document, because it's not a regular filing requirement, there's no place where it indicates for you to submit it. So what we recommend is when you're uploading your tax returns, that you put a cover sheet between the tax return and this form saying SBA Form 1368 following, so that they know when they scan everything into the system to break those two documents apart. And do you have to memorize this? No. That's what we're trying to do, is trying to give you the best guidance possible, but we also have a toll-free number where people can assist you with any of the questions that you have. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, nonprofits. Who's a nonprofit? Nursing home, a food kitchen, museum, art museums, all these different types of organizations. And what we're concerned with is being a private nonprofit. And when we say that, we simply mean not a government entity. Those are public nonprofits. So if you are a nonprofit as organized by the and recognized as one by the Internal Revenue Service, that's good for us. Next slide, please. Okay, here it comes. There are certain businesses. Remember, we said you've got to be a small business, so that's correct. You have to be a nonprofit, and they can be any size. But here's who we cannot help. We cannot help agricultural enterprises. The Small Business Act prevents SBA from lending to farmers or ranchers. So farmers are not eligible under this program ever. Religious organizations are not eligible for economic injury disaster loans. If we had a tornado, they will be eligible for repair costs, but this is not that situation. So for the economic injury, churches, parochial schools, any other type of religious organization is not eligible. Charitable organizations are not eligible unless they are organized as a nonprofit. And we talked about that being according to the IRS. So if you have a little business that's a hobby, you sell Avon or you sell something else, and you don't file taxes as a business, that's not eligible. Governments are not eligible. Gambling concerns are not eligible. Casinos and racetracks, and we've got a further definition here. And real estate developers, same thing. So not everybody is eligible, but most, and Michael would say 99% of the small businesses in Kentucky would be eligible. So we don't want to have you make decisions about who can apply and who can't. Unless it's stated here, then I think we should do our due diligence and help the business apply. Next slide, please. Okay, how you apply online. This is our website, and they can download the paper applications from www.sba.gov/disaster. Really, that'll take you just about anywhere you need to go. If you file paper loan application, not recommended, then you can mail it to the address here in Fort Worth, Texas. That's where all the loans are processed. We have a toll-free number, 800-659-2955, for you to ask questions if you get stuck helping a client on applying online, or if you are the business, if you need help or have questions. Now, what we're not able to do is walk you line by line by line. That's what we're trying to do amongst ourselves, is kind of help everybody learn how to fill out the forms and navigate the system. Next slide, please. Okay, so the assistance that businesses can rely on come from our partners, such as Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, Women's Business Centers, Veterans Business Outreach Centers, of course, chambers, our district offices, our regional offices, and the way you can find the location nearest to you is www.sba.gov/local-assistance. Next slide, please. The biggest reason for delays in processing is due to missing information. So try to make sure that you've met all the filing requirements when you're uploading the documents, and save, as Michael said, and save often. We're having people that are applying online getting knocked off the system because it's timing out. So it's best to have everything ready and make sure to save, and if you have difficulty, then you can come out of the program and you can go back in using your registration number, your username, and your password. If more funds are needed, then you can request an increase. If less funds are needed, you can request a decrease. Not all loans are approved. There are certain things that we just can't lend a business for, certain circumstances. Let's say that this gentleman has delinquent child support. Then that would be a reason for a decline. We would send a letter or a message to the portal with the information that you've been declined, but we would give the business up to 6 months to ask for reconsideration. If within that time they provide information that shows that the child support is current, we can reopen the file and process it. So no is not always no, but we are not going to be able to approve every single loan, because there are certain circumstances where the business might not qualify as a small business, or they have credit that is not satisfactory to SBA. If we go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to just take a minute, and Michael, do you want to ask me the questions?
Sure. And we've got a lot of them that are very similar to this. This one says, well, first one, can we sign up for the business loan and what information is needed? We've already covered that, but I think when this question was submitted, it was probably before late last Friday when Kentucky's declaration became active. We've gotten a lot of questions about loans to nonprofits and what might be converted in this situation, converted to grant in aid. Do you want to talk a little bit about grants, loans, converting to grants?
We don't make grants. We only make loans. Unless the law changes, this is a loan program. It is not forgiven. So we are making the best terms we can to make the loans affordable, but do not expect to have it turn into a grant.
What is the government doing to help the small business avoid repayment of huge loans to keep the business alive? We need the money now.
Okay, some of these loans, depending on the loan amount, are being processed to a decision very, very quickly. And the president and the administrator of the Small Business Administration, we are doing our best to make sure that everybody avails themselves of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. We can borrow up to $2 million, and that's what we're doing to alleviate the economic injury on small businesses and private nonprofits.
Can I add another comment here to that about avoiding repayment of huge loans, but also there are folks who have asked, I have an SBA loan now. Do I have to continue paying that and pay on this new economic impact disaster loan? We're actually doing a webinar in our office tomorrow to the lenders. SBA is allowing lenders of SBA loans, they're able to defer 3 months up to 6 months on loans that you currently might have with them. So our recommendation is to go ahead and ask them. They have that ability. Normally, if it gets beyond 3 months, then they have to get approval through SBA, but we are allowing them to set your existing SBA loan that you might have gotten through the bank or say a credit union, and you're able to ask for that deferment so you don't have to pay on that for 3 to 6 months, which should also help keep cash into your business that you really vitally need right now. Okay, here's one we often get to, Kathy. Can you define the term credit available elsewhere? What does that mean?
Okay, when SBA processes an economic injury disaster loan, we have a term called credit elsewhere. It has nothing to do with whether or not you can actually go to a bank or some other lender and get a loan. It is an internal formula and practice evaluation that is used to determine whether or not you qualify for the economic injury loan or not. Do not let that mean anything to you. Just apply. Do not count yourself out. You will miss out on this opportunity. So don't let that language mean anything. It's a proprietary term and has to do with processing of the applications.
Another question here, it states, these loans are not guaranteed. Is there any other help possible?
I'm sorry.
I think they're confusing the loan we were just talking about, a typical SBA guaranteed loan with this loan. This is not guaranteed. You're not getting the money through the bank. This is a totally different program, a totally different pool of funds for the economic injury disaster loan program.
Right. These are direct funds from the Treasury, and it is not something you go through a bank and then SBA guarantees the loan. This is you're making the payments directly to SBA. Thank you, Michael.
What is the interest rate?
The interest rate is 3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofit organizations. Again, you're going to have 11 months before you begin repaying. The first payment is going to be 12 months from the date on your promissory note.
And again, this interest rate is fixed for the life of the loan.
Absolutely.
Somebody asked here, I have read that loans granted under EIDL, the EIDL program would be forgiven.
By law,
sure
SBA disaster loans cannot be forgiven. Now, if they change the law and Congress writes something different, but do not count on grants and do not count on forgiveness.
Okay, how does a single practitioner survive this COVID incident?
Again, I think we're all working together to alleviate the immediacy of the pressure that a business has because things are becoming due and yet the revenue stream has dried up or considerably lessened. So that's why we're giving you an infusion of working capital to keep your business in business. And we're postponing the first payment for 11 months to help you survive this time and get back to normal before you start to have to pay the disaster loan back.
Will laying off employees disqualify me from this SBA loan program?
I'm sorry, I had a little hiccup in that. Can you read it again?
Will laying off employees disqualify me from this SBA loan program?
No, it will not. However, we're hoping that we lend enough for the business to keep business in operation in the way that they would have. So if you have long-term employees and you keep them on your payroll, then use the loan funds for the normal operating expenses. And so that's the way you can do it.
Okay, here's sort of a related question. How can we exist, or how can we survive rather, without any income? Do we have to pay employees 2 more or more weeks? I think they're talking about kind of mixing up unemployment with this loan program.
Yes, I can't speak about whatever state rules there are for businesses regarding paying employees and health insurance. Again, what we're trying to do, and don't get caught up in what if. What we're trying to get you to do is come in our doors and ask us for a particular loan amount. And we're going to review all your paperwork, and we're going to try to approve you for a loan if at all possible. So let the loan officer talk to you. Let them tell you, make an offer if they're able to approve you, but don't get caught up in what do I do with this and what do I do with that. The main goal here is for us to encourage businesses to apply, for businesses to apply, for businesses to get help in navigating through the documents. So get yourself in the doors and let us help you.
Hey,
Okay,
Michael, I have some fee stuff that keeps popping up on our chat. Fees associated with the loan, prepayment fees if it's paid off earlier, and a few people have asked about timeline for acceptance. Those 3 big things keep popping up on our chat.
Okay. There's no prepayment penalty for SBA disaster loans. There's no cost to apply, but there is a cost when you close a loan. For instance, if we require you to record a mortgage and your state requires to pay a fee to record the mortgage, that's some expense you have, but you have working capital funds to pay for the debts and obligations of the business. And let's see, I forgot the other one, Amy.
Timeline of acceptance. A lot of people have asked. Oh. I don't know if you can guarantee that.
We're trying to make all the loan decisions within 2 to 4 weeks. Of course, a bigger business, when we have businesses applied, let's say the owner owns 3 businesses, 3 separate legal entities. That may take longer to process than a sole proprietor who, let's say, does landscaping. So everything is dependent on several things. 1, how complicated the business structure is. 2, how many applications we get in. And 3, how complete your application package is. But I don't want you to get stressed about the paperwork. If you don't have your federal tax returns, then send a note and you're getting them and send it in later. But make sure that you at least have the tax return transcript request for the IRS in your application, as many things as you can supply, because what we want to do, what Michael and I and Amy want to do, is we want your application or your client's application to go in the system and right to a loan officer's desk and stay in the loan officer's desk until there's a decision, hopefully an approval, and then go to legal. Not to stop because you didn't answer one of the questions and had a check mark beside it and you ignored it and you tried to submit the application. Okay. Next.
All right, Michael, do you have another one?
Yes, this is actually kind of related to another one that I'll pose in a minute. Our business was forced to close and the season is questionable. Should we go ahead and apply?
Absolutely. Apply, apply, apply. Everybody is impacted. Even here in Atlanta, there are a lot of restaurants that are still open, but they're only open for carryout. That's not the same volume of traffic, generally speaking, as they're getting when it's open full-time, full hours, and with carryout and in-house customers. So just apply, 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 apply.
How's the loan amount determined?
What we want you to do is you to tell us how much you need, and we're going to analyze the information you submitted and determine the loan amount. So make sure that you let us know what you're looking at and submit it.
As an independent contractor, am I eligible?
The only people that are ineligible is if you are not a small business or you're one of those types of businesses that are on our ineligible page. So generally speaking, don't count yourself out. Apply, apply, apply.
Kathy, how long will this be available?
Until they say no.
Okay.
That's the long and short of it. We have never in the history of this program, which was designed in 1953, disaster loans have been made that long, have ever had anything that was a national declaration. We are concerned for small businesses and want to do everything we can to keep them standing. So the deadline to apply is currently December 18, 2020. But if we need to go beyond that, I'm sure that the administrator will extend the deadline beyond that. So the only urgency in getting in is we process first in, first out. But you've got till December to apply.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see here. I've got several questions kind of related around the issue of nonprofits. A lot of confusion about that. Private nonprofits or other types of nonprofits. Anything you can elaborate on with that, Kathy?
I will send Michael a list of filing requirements for nonprofits. They're different than for-profit businesses, of course, because we're not asking the members of the nonprofit to guarantee the loan. So we will have special guidance, and it's certainly available on our website too, but we will get that to you. And please don't count yourself out even if you're a nonprofit. So I want you to apply, but there's just, if you are a nonprofit and you don't file tax returns because you're exempt, then we need, indications from the IRS that you are exempt from filing. And we'll work off of the operating agreements and balance sheets. So there's a provision for everybody. I've been working in a disaster assistance for 30 years, so believe me, we've come across everything, but what we want to do is try to move smoothly through and to try to get the best information we can in the system.
Okay. I own investment property, but my tenants cannot pay rent. Does my business qualify for this type of loan?
That's the same as a retailer where people are not paying their credit card bills for whatever that is, or other things. So yes, lost rents for rental property are eligible. Again, we're asking you, we're looking at the financials, but we're asking the individual business owner to put down what they need in the form of the economic injury disaster loan. And we're going to try to work to qualify you for what makes sense for this particular disaster, which we have no idea how long it's going to go on. But the president and the administrator are serious about shoring up the small businesses. Next question.
Okay. I have a startup business that's less than a year old. Can I apply?
Apply, apply, apply. If you go home with one tip, it's to apply. Don't count yourself out. And even if you were to get declined, that's not the end. You can supply additional information and ask for reconsideration. So don't count yourself out.
Okay. Here's one here, again, getting back to what we talked earlier on. Is applying directly through the SBA website the best way to do this?
The best way to do this is through the SBA website. And if you look at the screen and you see www.sba.gov/disaster, that will take you to apply online. It will also take you to an area where you can print the paper loan documents, and that's probably the best way. We have several different URLs that are being used to direct you to the same place. So if you get a different link from somewhere else, don't worry about it. Use whatever you get and don't count yourself out again. Apply, apply, apply.
Amy, are you getting some other questions coming in that you see a little bit different type?
There were, let's see, if they own two businesses, I imagine I would apply for two different loans. Is that correct?
Okay, that if they're organized, it's different entities, then you make two applications. And then you're called affiliates, and the affiliate group can only be loaned $2 million. On the questions that were submitted before the presentation, I've had this all day long, and I find it kind of an interesting question about dentists, and if dentists are eligible or doctors eligible. They are eligible. Why? Because they're a small business. They might not be able to see patients. They might see some patients, not all patients. Not all doctors are open. Not all doctors are doctors from the hospital. So medical staff, they can apply. Organized as a business, sole proprietor, corporation, partnership, a limited liability company, apply, apply, apply. What is the one prohibition? Generally speaking, if you're a for-profit, you got to be a small business. How do I find out as a small business? You go to SBA's website. You look at the North American Industry Classification System, NAICS. Find the code for your business and look across and see either the revenue or the number of employees that you can have that will qualify you as a small business. And even if it's close to that, apply, 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 because that's just a starting block.
Yeah, and again, I think Kathy mentioned this early on in her presentation about most tax returns. On the top sheet of your tax return, it lists at least 4 digits for most of the businesses. That's that industry number. It goes 4 to 6 digits. depending on how precise the person preparing it is for you. But a lot of those businesses are service-based. In fact, most businesses service-based now. So as Kathy said about dentists and doctors and attorneys, landscapers, electricians, plumbers, whether it's skilled trades or whether it's something else, you're not disqualified just because you're an individual with no employees. If you're a small business, you're eligible to apply, and certainly do that.
We've also had Kathy, and Michael, a few people mention about if your business is in Kentucky, but your home office is not in Kentucky. How do you go about applying for one of these loans? Which address are they asking to use?
We're asking people to use the declaration for where their home base office is.
Okay.
So if the office is across the river in Tennessee, then you should apply under Tennessee. And it won't matter one bit because all the loans are the same interest rate no matter what state it is. The rules are the same no matter what state. This is, from that standpoint, a great disaster because nobody has a situation where their county or their area is not eligible for assistance.
That brings up a couple of questions that are related to that. When will the program run out of money?
What normally happens in disaster is we get a budget and we use it, and when we come to the end of it, we ask Congress for more. They are working on the package for SBA now, but do not let that be a concern. Do not think that you're taking money out of another business that's more hurt. Apply, apply, apply.
And then sort of related to that, are the funds for these recovery loans based on the population of a state? In other words, a more rural state will get less money.
They are not based on population. They're not based on state. It's a national program, and the money is given to the Small Business Administration, allocated to Small Business Administration, not by state, not by any other criteria.
Lots of people, Kathy and Michael, are asking about independent contractors, and I know this isn't where this is. Is there a resource that you all know of off the top of your head about folks, either one that are independent contractors or those that work with independent contractors? Like a lot of our seasonal tourism that's supposed to be starting right now, they use independent contractors, and they're trying to be a resource to those colleagues. Do you all have that, or is that another webinar for another day?
Not another webinar. If this individual, independent contractor, files taxes and they put their wages on there, they're eligible. Okay. So again, I think that it's hard to answer each person's individual business situation. And some of the things I say here may subject to change. Because I don't have every single component of the business's structure or, every single component of the question, but we're doing the best to streamline everything. And let's just say that unless I mentioned, churches and agriculture, that everybody should come through the doors and apply. And not everybody's going to be approved, but majority of the people that come through and qualify for a small business as a small business, that's the key. Okay.
This goes back to something you talked about earlier, and I'm sorry if I forgot it, but if a business is approved and the administration puts through the forgivable payroll loans, will their loan revert to that if that's what they're using the SBA to keep people employed? I mean, the
SBA loans are used to keep the business in business, pay the ordinary expenses of the business. It has nothing to do with whether there's payroll taxes are not requested or other things happen. That has nothing to do with it. So the states can make decisions about the businesses. The municipalities can make decisions about businesses. Other loan programs can make decisions about deferments and forgiveness and postponements and what have you. We can't speak on all of those behalfs. What we have to do is just be concerned with trying to get the business some money to pay the debts and obligations that it's currently having.
Okay.
And to piggyback on that, again, as Kathy said, you're going to get this money in installments, not one lump sum. So if you start to get some money and something different comes through with Congress, you're not obligated to take all of the money at that point. If your circumstances changed and it improves, you can just take a small portion. You don't have to take any of it if things move along more rapidly for your business. So that the best thing to do is go ahead and get in the queue and apply, as she said, now. And if things change, you can make adjustments at that point. Better to have yourself covered on multiple bases than none.
I would agree with that, Michael. Yes, that would be an issue later on if they were to get a forgivable loan through a stimulus package and also qualify for an SBA loan. That's something that they can work out once they see what's going to benefit them.
But let's not think about forgiveness. Do not think about grants just because if you get it, that will be great. That would be wonderful. I would wish it for everybody. But let's work on what is instead of hoping for some other types of relief. Just because I don't want you to think that this is going to be converted into a grant or a forgivable loan. If something else happens in Congress, that will be announced, and we'll take consideration of that and handle the loans accordingly. But right now, let's just take it, and we're really trying to say when you apply for the loan, we're not looking at you how you are today with zero income. We're looking at the business how you were before the coronavirus started. That's what we're doing. So if you go, well, I had to shut my doors and I had to lay everybody off. What do I need this money for? No. What we're doing is trying to keep your business in operation as the way it could. So you still have lease payments. You still have mortgage payments. You still have quarterly taxes. If you choose to still pay for your employees, you've still got payroll. All of these things, we're looking at how the business operated before. And then what the business needs to keep on trucking. And I don't mean necessarily physically you have to open your shop because you got an SBA disaster loan. No, we're trying to keep the operation going, and we still have to be mindful of the quarantine requirements of the state and the municipality. So I'm not saying you have to open your doors. What we're saying is we're giving you 11 months of postponement of this loan payment so that you can continue operations. We don't want you to close your doors. Once this is over, we want you to be in a manner that you can exist the way you did before the coronavirus disaster.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Michael, we have one more question before we wrap things up.
Well, it's going to be more of a comment, but just in regards to what Kathy said, this is unprecedented. We've never dealt with anything of this scale. And things that they have done to the program, the deferment before you had to make that first payment used to be perhaps 4 months. So taking it out 11 months gives you a lot of wiggle room before you even need to begin paying back that loan. That may change everything in the way you're thinking about whether I can keep employees on payroll when I have no income, whether I can even keep my business open or not. We don't want to see thousands and thousands of businesses shuttering their doors. So we understand you would love to get the money tomorrow. We can't get it to you that quickly, but they are doing everything possible. And they have hundreds and hundreds of folks in the disaster centers working these as quickly as they can. And it's 24/7. They are doing this around the clock. And if you have questions and need to talk to someone or send an email to someone off peak hours, not 8 to 5. You know, some of you might not be sleeping so well. I'm not sleeping so well right now either, worrying about all of you. So, you know, evenings, weekends, when others might be doing other things, you'd be surprised the number of people I've already talked to that said on the second ring, somebody picked up and it was live. They can't believe it. I mean, they are very dedicated, hardworking people, just like all of you are, and they're trying to help you to succeed and stay open and get through this. We all are going to get through this if we keep working together.
Just one correction. We don't have our switchboard 24/7 yet. We're kind of 8 to 8 right now,
Okay.
and we have been answering over 80,000 calls in a day.
Wow.
So you just have to know that, like you said, this is unprecedented, and if somebody doesn't answer when you call the switchboard, then please call back.
Okay, I said last questions, but there's two that keep popping up, and I'm sorry I keep missing these. First payment in 11 months. Interest starts now?
Interest starts once there's a disbursement, so it's on the amount disbursed, and that's a real heavy financial thing for somebody to understand. But if we disperse $50,000 to begin with, and your loan is $150, then the interest just accrues on the $50, and then when we disperse the second, which would be $100,000, then the interest accrues on the $150. So generally speaking, once you get toward the end of the loan, we find that your last payment is significantly less than a regular payment because interest only accrues on the disbursed amount at the time it's disbursed.
Okay, and I've had a few people ask this for blind individuals. Is there a way for they use screen readers? Is there a way for them to utilize this information as well?
I have not ever had that question.
Okay.
So I really have to defer to that. We try to put our things on the website to make them compliant, but we may have to work with the Institute for the Blind in trying to prepare materials that they can use. So as we come along, these kinds of things, I'll farm them up to management.
Okay.
And that brings up another question about those that don't speak English or speak English well. They have folks who can, who they can talk with as well on those.
Okay. We're getting to the end of this. Kathy and Michael, you all have been wonderful. I know there's a million questions in our chat over here. I will tell you guys this. We are going to get a frequently asked question, a fact page up on the SBA link on the Kentucky Chamber page. kychamber.com. You'll see where to click on coronavirus. There'll be a blue highlighted entity on that page that says SBA loans. When we open that, it will be a PDF of this presentation so you can see the slides and be able to print the slides, a video link, a FAQ page. We will try to get to as many as we can as soon as we can. Please don't hem us in on a time frame because there are other things we are posting to our webpage as we speak. But I have copied all of the questions that have come through our chat. Hopefully we've answered a lot of them for you all. SBA.gov/disaster. Michael Ashcraft, Kathy Cook at SBA.gov if you need to get them. Thank you all. You all have been experts. If we do more of these, which we probably will, we will make sure that the public knows. But thank you all for joining us, Michael and Kathy. We really appreciate your expertise in walking us through these uncharted territories. So thank you so much.